My father was the longest continual employee of Warner Brothers from 1931 until they closed the studio in '63. He was skilled as an animator and as a director. My father, along with his two brothers, Charles and Tom, were natural-born artists. He studied under a master for 10 years. He studied anatomy, and he was an oil painter, and he was successful in every medium of art. He came into cartooning quite by accident. When he was about 18 years old, they were looking for something to do, and apparently a relative knew Walt Disney, and he hired them both on as assistant animators. He was only there for a year, and then after that, they went over to Romer Gray's new studio.
Romer had this character named Binko the Cub that he thought was going to be a big hit. Well, he worked for him about a year on it, and then Romer Gray got more interested in spending his money on yachts and foreign travel and just left them all high and dry.
And that's when they went over to Harmonizing, who was releasing their cartoons through Warner Brothers.
Robert McKimson, who was there right from the beginning with Harmonizing, I mean, he was one of the best artists that they'd had. He was also one of the best animators in the studio through its whole history.
He was very fast, and he was the consummate artist. Sometime in the 30s, my father was in an accident where he had hit his head, and when he had a slight concussion, when he woke up, he could then visualize things much better, and he could animate at a very rapid rate.
Before, he'd been doing 30 feet of film animation a week. After he recovered from that accident, he started doing 80, 90 feet a week with no problem.
In the early 30s, if you were a very fast, very efficient animator, this made you very important. The people who worked with him marveled at the fact that he could make a drawing precisely without any rough preparation. He would simply put the pen down and draw the character.
He would never have to erase anything. He could do perfect circles without, making mistakes, and I think he was just innately gifted artist from an early age.
Bob McKimson was one of the first animators outside of the Disney studio whose animation had some of the same refinement and precision that the best Disney animators brought to their work.
Before he became a director, he was the principal model maker there and created the models for most of the famous Looney Tunes characters and then refining them from there.
Some of the most important animation he did was in The Wild Hare, which is generally recognized as being the definitive shaping of Bugs Bunny as a character.
Whoa, hold it!
You see an attention to Bugs' psychology and to the kind of sly deviltry that we associate with Bugs, this kind of dry, ironic quality. A lot of those things are being given shape in that cartoon through McKimson's animation.
Goodbye, pal. Goodbye.
Bob was a fabulous animator. He was such a good animator that he checked the animator. He was given the job to check their work.
Because he was looking at everybody's animation for all the units, it started to take on more of a unified construction. So he was very important to the basic drawing, the basic design that's in all those characters.
Tex Avery at this time made a number of cartoons that make sense mostly as vehicles for exploiting Bob McKimson's abilities as a very precise, very subtle animator. And why did he make these? Well, it's because he had a very strong, dominating animator on his staff who could do that kind of thing. And if you have that kind of animator who really wants to do that kind of thing, well, you're probably going to let him do it because he's just too good to turn him down.
Back when he worked on Clampett's unit, he was the one that really was kind of the glue that held some of the more wilder elements together and made a terrific cartoon.
Bob Clampett was the zany unit, the crazy unit, the unit that had characters doing off-the-wall wild takes. McKimson fit in there perfectly because he really balanced out the insanity with his beautiful, beautiful animation.
He did the wonderful Bugs Bunny animation at the start of Falling Hair, where Bugs is sitting on the bomb reading Victory Through Hair Power. That's all Bob's stuff. Some of the best Bugs drawing and animation ever done.
He animated for both Avery and Clampett, and he finished his animation career with Clampett in 1944 and then became a director.
McKimson was in many ways the obvious choice, the senior animator on the staff, the most experienced.
He was offered the job more than once before he accepted it. I think he was offered the job when Chuck Jones was offered, before Chuck was, he said, oh, let Chuck do it. I want to stick to animation. But finally, he had to take it.
Friz said they put Bob McKimson in after Tashlin left so they wouldn't get any more high-powered directors like Tashlin. Like Chuck and Friz wanted to protect their interests.
Oh, we are the boys of the chorus. We hope you like our show.
I'm an enormous fan of Robert McKimson cartoons. I think he is the undiscovered genius of those Warner Brothers directors. And there was a time when you didn't say it out loud at the cartoon festivals.
McKimson gets the short shrift of the trio of directors during the 1950s. McKimson's cartoons really didn't have the style that Chuck had, and they didn't quite have that expert timing that Freeling had. But he had something else. He had a personality that came through in his cartoons. He was able to make cartoons that people really responded to and related to, maybe even more so than some of the ones that Chuck and Friz did.
Chuck didn't like to use too much animation. He would just hold Bugs' expression, whereas Bob liked to do a big expansion of the gesture, and that takes more drawings. Kimson's Bugs was based on the stuff he'd done for Clampett, which was a much more aggressive version of the character. So that's what he used in Rebel Rabbit and some of his best Bugs Bunnies.
Never mind that. How come rabbits are only 2 cents? Huh?
Many of his Bugs Bunny cartoons are considered classic, whether it's Rabbit's Kin with Pete Puma.
What's up, Doc?
I got a little rabbit in this hole, and I'm gonna catch the little rabbit and eat him up.
Whether it's Hillbilly Hare with that great square dancing sequence at the end that's just a classic.
Step right up, you're doing fine. I'll pull your bed, you pull mine. Ain't gonna look at it before. Break it up with a tug-of-war.
And a lot of us animation historians forget that. These are absolutely hilarious classic cartoons.
In those days, people loved what they were doing. They wanted to create a fine theatrical event for people to see, and each unit could go about and do what it wanted. They could use their own imagination a lot more than they could at Disney, and I think that's what created some of the great characters and the great cartoons. But I think my father's real joy was working with the Looney Tunes characters. Foghorn Leghorn was my father's first major character.
Shut up!
Foghorn Leghorn being probably the strongest example of a character who seemed comfortable with the style that McKimson developed as a director. There's a lot of ferocious energy to them.
Shut up!
This is like sort of basic Warner Brothers, where the characters they're fighting almost for the love of it rather than because there's any real issue at stake.
Now look at here.
The character is modeled on Senator Claghorn, which was in the Fred Allen radio show popular during the 40s and 50s.
Now you stand right here. You're not looking at me, boy. I'll tell you when to move.
Okay.
He was kind of a wisecracking Southern senator, and that's where again, the voice characterization came from and the mannerisms and that type of thing. But originally, Foghorn was meant to be a secondary character to Henry Hawk.
You lose something? I say you lose something, kid.
I'm a chicken hawk. I'm after my first chicken.
In the particular case of Henry Hawk, apparently Jones wasn't using it. My father asked him if he could use it, but it turned out just the opposite, that Foghorn ended up to be the lead character. Funny enough that the first cartoon with Foghorn and Henry was nominated for an Academy Award. My father was trying to, again, create another foil for Sylvester, so that's how Sylvester Jr. came about. And of course, then Hippity Hopper to go with that also. So I think that's the reason why, so he could have characters that would meld in with Sylvester.
I think one thing that's also interesting about McKimson is that he made the cartoon Speedy Gonzales in a film called Cattails for Two.
He based the characterization of Speedy on these two Mexican brothers that he played with. He played polo with. Speedy represented the best of Mexico because Speedy was always a winner. Speedy was not a loser. So I don't see how anybody could read anything into it. It's beyond me.
George?
Robert McKimson introduced the world to the Tasmanian Devil, the character that will live forever.
And what, pray tell, is a Tasmanian devil to create such a furore?
This was the last major character that was created at the studio. This was the mid-50s. My father was a consummate crossword puzzle addict, and so they were looking for a new character that wasn't a dog, a cat, a mouse, or a rabbit. So my father said, what about a Tasmanian devil? Well, none of his animators, which included my Uncle Chuck, knew what a Tasmanian devil was. So my father said to his animators, he said, look, you all draw a cartoon version of Tasmanian devil would look like, and I'll draw the same thing. So my father took their drawings and incorporated it into his final model sheet for the Tasmanian devil, and that's how it was created.
Those entrances were fantastic in terms of, how he would enter a cartoon, the whirling tornado, combination tornado buzzsaw, and just the whole violent, sloppy ethos of the character is something that people really latched onto.
In fact, it was a character that was not very well liked by the upper management at Warner Brothers, so they only made 5 of them.
Eddie Seltzer saw it and said, never make another one. He said he's too violent. And so my father did not make another one, but there was such an uproar that it got to Jack Warner, and Jack Warner called Eddie Seltzer and said, make more. And that is the reason the next 4 cartoons with the Tasmanian Devil were made. Otherwise, it would have just been one cartoon. It is my understanding Tasmanian Devil is the second most popular character in the Looney Tunes family after Bugs Bunny.
I think out of all the directors, McKimson was the one who was most enchanted by the influence of television. In the mid-50s, you had McKimson out doing parodies of the Honeymooners.
Hey, Ralph, Ralphie boy, new people moving in.
Jack Benny had seen the Honey Mousers and called Jack Warner and asked him why he couldn't have a cartoon made about his group. So that's what led my father into doing the mouse that Jack built. As far as I know, it is the only cartoon where celebrities did the voices.
I always feel better if I count my cheese before I go out for the evening. Da-dum, da-da-dum, da-dum, da-da-dum, da-dum, da-da-da-da-dum, bum-ba-da-dum.
Animation was being hailed as an art at foreign film festivals.
Henry!
So Bob McKimson made a film called The Whole Idea, and he animated it all by himself. It was a completely unique idea about a portable whole. That really says a lot about what his thinking was about animation and what he would do with the complete freedom of making his own film.
Bob McKimson thought it was the most clever story idea he'd ever seen. It kind of has a UPA flavor to it. So yeah, that's almost a one-man show, which is rare in theatrical animation.
After the studio closed, my father worked with Freeling and DePatie doing Pink Panthers, and he directed a lot of those for them.
Chris Freeling and Bob McKimson were creating new Looney Tunes, with, say, Daffy pitted against Speedy. McKimson did a lot of those.
He made some Roadrunners also around the same time. Not his best work at all.
They started cutting his budgets, and because he'd been so dependent on really good animation and good animators, he really felt the impact of that.
They were consciously trying to reinvent what they had done before with a limited design style that was very elegant and that would really showcase this new approach to animation. McKimson gamely tried to make them what he could, but I also think it got to be a very easy shortcut, and finally they were just indistinguishable from everything else on Saturday morning at that time.
Robert McKimson spans the whole of Warner Brothers history. In fact, he's one of the few Warner Brothers core people to work on The Incredible Mr. Limpet.
I know that my father, he loved every minute of animating and directing the Looney Tunes gang of characters. And the fact that I think he did have a lot of freedom in utilizing his own style and creating cartoons that not only he would enjoy, but that generations to come would enjoy.
McKimson died in the late 70s. I don't think he was ever looking to be a grandstander, to be a leader. He was a working cartoonist who knew his craft and created a lot of great work that a lot of people are going to remember.
5 Years of Foghorn Leghorns were some of the strongest cartoons of all time, so I do think he's gotten a bit of a raw deal in the history books and reputation-wise. Then again, I don't think as a human being he was as outgoing as some of the others. He was very meek and mild, and that may well have been reflected in the fact that he couldn't pull rank like some of the others could.
I think Bob McKimson, his strongest legacy is what he revealed in his best animation for Tex Avery, and especially for Bob Clampett, about how beautifully drawn, how beautifully animated true cartoon characters can be. If people would have studied those cartoons, think about what he did, and build on that, we would have much better films than we've been seeing for the last few decades.
He never got any or very few accolades. You know, nobody recognized it at that point because it doesn't have the fame that it does today, but it was still great to see his name on the screen, and a lot of my friends would ask me about it, so it was great.